like talking about anything even remotely political, but I feel like there's going to be a riot in my mentions if I don't give you animals something. So, fine. Let's talk about the trans stuff. I'm Renee Descartes, and welcome to Rational Talk. So, first of all, I want to be clear. I'm going to be talking about the trans thing from a purely logical and rational standpoint. Neither me nor the facts care about your feelings. Second of all, I'm not advocating for anything. I'm a philosopher. I'm going to give you the philosophical underpinnings of the trans movement and tell you whether or not it makes sense. Anyone using this video to advance an agenda has fundamentally missed the point of what we do here at Rational Talk. That being said, let's dive in. So for those of you who have watched my Meditations in Philosophy series, the next part might feel a bit repetitive, but the crux of my beliefs that I talk about, especially in 2 and 5, are what I'm going to be basing my opinions on here. So bear with me through the philosophy and we'll get to the spicy stuff, I promise. In Meditation 2, I start from the idea that everything can be doubted, until I can find the one thing that can't be, and then I know I'm basing my conclusions on solid ground. Essentially, I'm going to proceed by treating everything whose existence can be doubted in the least as completely false. Think about it like the Matrix. What if there is something feeding directly into your brain, convincing you that you're sitting in your room watching this video, that the room is real, that you are real? How do you know that's not the case? If you prefer a more grounded metaphor, think about the last time you had a really vivid dream, in which you ran around performing tasks and experiencing emotions, talking to people, and believing passionately in that reality. How do you know you're not dreaming now? The point I'm trying to get across is that through the haze of every experience we have every day, there's only one thing we can really be sure of. Those experiences are happening to an I. If we are in the Matrix, the program is deceiving something. Something is having that dream. So we found our one indubitable thing, the I. But what exactly is it? It's like I know that I am, but not precisely what I am. From our previous round of doubting, we can rule out the idea that the undoubtable I is linked intrinsically to the body, because the only evidence of that body we have comes from the senses, which might be compromised by the Matrix, by a dream, or by something else entirely. Throwing out the body then, let's talk about the I. In my video Meditations 2, I make the argument that the only attribute that cannot be separated from that I is thought. And if you stopped thinking, you would essentially stop existing altogether. We are, of course, rational beings here on Rational Talk. Turning towards the trans issue now, I feel confident in saying that there isn't some essentially gendered aspect of a person. Some bodies might have different chromosomes or different hormone levels, different sex organs or sexual characteristics, but ultimately these things are kind of irrelevant when we can't even be sure the body exists in any sort of meaningful capacity. And it's not logically consistent to extend some kind of special category of certainty to those physical aspects when we don't do the same for things like eye color or hair type or anything like that. What we can be certain of is the I, the thing that thinks and therefore is. And there is no room in that very narrow definition for the complicated concept of gender, something that was dreamt up by human beings in 1,000 different ways, in 1,000 different societies, in 1,000 different times and places. The official accepted anthropological definition of gender includes things like social role, stereotypes, physical appearance, gesture, self-identity, even fashion choices. And those things might be really important to some people, but can we rely on their existence without a shadow of a doubt? No. In my video Meditation 5, I do talk about the fact that some things have a truth or existence to them that do not originate in the mind and are separatable from it. As an example of this, remember when you were 5 years old drawing shapes in the dirt? No matter where you were, in time or in space, the triangle that you drew in front of you would have had angles that added up to 180 degrees. Now, you didn't know what an angle was, or who Pythagoras was, or even the name of the shape in front of you. Regardless, that mathematical fact remains true. Now, you might think gender is like that, some sort of universal constant truth that everyone in every society would eventually stumble across, like math. Maybe the undoubtable things list includes I, triangles, and gender. But no. In order for that to be the case, we would need to have evidence of every person in every society, in every time and every place, stumbling across the exact same gender truth. Sure, there are commonalities, but commonalities do not a clear and distinct truth make. Essentially, if you ask me if trans people are quote-unquote real or not, or whether it's possible to physically, mentally, socially transgress gender boundaries, you're all sort of spiraling down a rabbit hole with no coherent answer in sight. If you're looking for the one true, real, actual gender, you're not going to find it, because there's only one thing we can really be sure of. If you think, you are. And triangles. So please, God, stop bothering me about what pronouns people are using, what bathrooms they're going into. I don't care. All the world's a stage, and the men and women merely players. They have their exits and their entrances, and one man might in his time play many parts, but can he be transgender? There's been a lot of talk for the past, 70 plus years or so, about what it means to be a man or a woman and who gets to be one, and even if it means anything to be either of them at all. And as a philosophy YouTuber, I'm contractually obligated to give you my opinion on the subject, whether or not any of you asked for it. Let's start with the basics. Let's talk about bodies. I've argued before on this channel that what it means to have a body is something socially constructed, not naturalistic, and by that I mean that there is nothing stable enough across time and place and culture that could create a basis for self-recognition or understanding of other humans. There is no natural way for human beings to exist or behave that would be some kind of universal standard without something influencing us one way or the other. To put that in terms of what we're discussing today, if we restarted the human race or gave ourselves collective amnesia or something, there is no pure distilled essence of humanity that would emerge. The traits, behaviours, desires, appearances that we perform are all created and recreated by cultural practices of power in society. Modern power tends to operate by codifying these kinds of norms into what appears to be objective fact. Think about how psychology uses the DSM-6 to delineate the exact normal limits of personality or attention or even gender, or how biologists publish papers pinpointing the exact normal ratio of body fat to muscle or blood pressure or hormone levels even. We take these norms and then we change our behaviour and expectations to match, and then we look in the mirror and seem to be proving ourselves right. It's basically a cycle of self-fulfilling prophecies. To give a directly relevant real-life example, think about this series of events, or logical steps, if you will. In our current society, a male person is defined by the presence of male sex organs, penis, testes. A female person is defined by the presence of female sex organs, clitoris, vagina, ovaries, uterus. These are norms, not universal truths, as 1.6% at least of babies do not fit into those categories when they're born. When they are born, clinical tools such as the Prater scale or the Quigley scale are used to describe and define these babies that don't fit into categories. Surgeries are then performed on them to place them into one category or another. The babies, now fully categorized, are raised male and female, and the flawed definition just perpetuates itself. Now, as I've stated before on my channel, I don't think that the phenomenon of power institutionalizing these norms and then the rest of us following them is something intrinsically or fundamentally evil or malicious. It's just sort of what happens when you live in a society. We sort of run into an issue with activism then, though, because if we're looking to make life better by the people harmed by the current standards, then we can't simply tear the old ones down and then declare ourselves liberated, because there's really nothing underneath. Nothing fundamental or inevitable. We can replace the old norms with the new, and that's what's happened throughout history and what will hopefully happen in the case of intersex babies. But fundamentally, we're going to have to accept that as time goes by, the norms that we put in place to replace the ones that we decided were hurting people are eventually going to need replacing themselves. A good example of this is the way that the terms genderqueer and non-binary, coined in the 90s by queer activists, were originally designed to liberate trans people from the norms of the repressive gender binary, but now, nearly half a century later, Some feel that this has only succeeded in turning that repressive gender binary into a repressive gender trinary, one that comes with a whole new set of beauty standards, behavioural norms, stereotypes and social roles that non-binary people now must enact and reenact. So what are you to make of all of this? Am I telling you that resistance is futile and that we're all stuck being slaves to nonsensical roles built for us by power until we die? Well, yes, but also no. I mean, it's like the wind. If you have hot air and cold air in one place, you're gonna feel a breeze. And sometimes it is destructive, and sometimes it's pleasant, and sometimes it is neither of those things. Unlike the wind, though, together we have a modicum of control over how power affects our lives, and with time and with activism, we can change how it impacts us. Now, I want to tear down the gender binary. I'm right there with you. But my warning to you is not to get too attached to whatever it is you build in its place. Whatever norms that you build out of a genuine desire for freedom, well, they're going to need to be replaced eventually too, by people just like you. I don't like talking about anything even remotely. Hello everybody! Bit of a different video today than usual. Today we're going to have a debate with René Descartes of Rational Talk about something we basically agree on. So, let's get right into it. Before we start though, René, can I get a trans rights? Trans rights. Thank you, I hope everyone jotted that down. Just wanted to get it out of the way because, you know, it's kind of a sensitive topic and people tend to get a bit defensive if they think they're listening to someone who wants to wipe them off the face of the earth. Let's start with what we agree on. The idea that sex and gender are fundamentally illusory and have no referent in, like, objective reality. Now, I think that because I think that the body itself, what we deem part of it, what we deem deviant or acceptable, the way we move it and use it and think of it are all so bound up in the capital P power that runs our specific time and place that there simply isn't anything universal that could exist in common amongst, like, for example, every woman that ever existed or ever will. But your stance might even be more radical than that, right? Yeah, I'm coming at this from a place of extreme skepticism. Like, you want to talk about the body and all its implications and all that, but you can't even prove to me that we even have a body, like, at all. The only thing that's telling us we do is our senses, and as I'm sure you're aware, they can be pretty unreliable. So I'd posit that all the social connotations of things like the body and sex and gender can't even begin to matter if we don't have this foundational answer to the question of its existence. So you think I'm wasting my time, basically? Basically, yeah. I feel like the heart of our disagreement here is that while we both came to the same conclusion, we got there in basically opposite ways, you know? Like, I looked from the outside in and you came from the inside out. Guess you could say that. I mean, I've always been pretty open about the fact that I find it hard to believe you can look outside yourself for the truth or even reliable information. Like, bringing it back to the original topic here, if someone tells you he's a man, I don't understand what grounds you have to stand on to refute that. Are you gonna look at his body and go, oh, that doesn't fit my definition of what a male body looks like, and ignore the fact that you have no way of knowing how accurate your perception of his body is, or if he's part of the Matrix, or if the two of you are both dreaming? Like, worst case scenario, he's lying to you, I guess? Who cares, essentially, is what I'm saying. It's insane to me that people seem to care so deeply about what's going on with other people's bodies and mental landscapes while living completely unexamined lives. We'll make an SJW out of you yet, René. Gross. Anyway, that is a really interesting way to view the world. If the only things that are real are cogitatos and triangles, I'm curious as to what you'd say to social theorists like me, who spend basically our entire lives studying this people-based phenomena, you know, gender, culture, religion and whatnot. I guess I'd tell you that it's impossible to discover clear and distinct truth from anything outside oneself, apart from some rare exceptions like mathematics or God. Any other source of truth is just too unstable. And I guess I'd tell you that your sample size is too small. There really is a limit on what can be truly known in a Cartesian world, isn't there? Pretty cringe. Okay, I'm sorry I called you cringe on Twitter. I really don't have an issue with trans people, as I'm pretty sure that I've demonstrated here. Don't you? I mean, it's one thing to say that you believe that they exist and that you're okay letting them continue to do that, but oppressed communities kind of deserve a bit more from you, wouldn't you say? No, not really. I mean, I demonstrated philosophical proof for their existence, and now what? I'm supposed to be nice to every single person being loud and obnoxious on the street? Look, I'm not bigoted, I just don't care that much. I think we've just found another place we disagree, my friend. I believe that social activism is a good thing, and that being loud and obnoxious is pretty much the only way that we can replace the shitty, repressive norms imposed on us by power with something that actually makes people's lives better. Mate, I've watched your videos. You don't even believe it's possible to liberate people from power. Isn't it disingenuous to tell people that they can win this unwinnable battle? Not unwinnable. Unending, maybe, but that doesn't make it any less worthy of fighting. What I said was that it's impossible to get rid of the concept of power altogether, and that norms will always need to be replaced with new norms. That doesn't mean that gender roles in 2020 aren't better than when they were in 1920. But you think by 2120 there's still a chance that people are going to be hurt by whatever you lot decide is better than this. Why would you purposefully attach yourself to something that you're sure is going to hurt people eventually? Not all things are equally bad, my friend. In the face of uncertainty, you want to retreat to what you know to be true and build a little house there and never go outside again. I want to fight to replace it with something better. Nice speech. It was, wasn't it? It was good to talk to you, Renee. DM me if you ever want to poke your head out of your little truth cabin again. Now you're pushing it. I'm sorry I called you twinge.